Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here with us. My name is Eric. I am your host today, and I am a SuiteScript coach over at Stoic Software. I am joined in my hosting duties today by one of Salto's customer engineers, Jeff Rutledge. Jeff, how are you doing?
Hey, folks.
I want to start just quickly by highlighting sort of the mission, I suppose, of the Salto platform. So Salto is not a consulting company that's looking to sell you any services or anything like that. They have instead they are a software company that has built you a powerful DevOps platform for NetSuite teams and many other business platform teams to plan, review, deploy, and monitor your changes to your NetSuite accounts. You can try out Salto for yourself by heading over to salto.io and signing up for a free 30-day trial, as well as schedule a personalized demo. We've done several of these live demos this year, and in a lot of those previous sessions, we have given full overviews of the Salto platform. We've shown more specific features. We've shown how to do things like identify and clean up stale customizations. Uh, and we've shown how Salto can help to automate some of your deployment processes and validations and approvals. Um, we've shown all of those things, and you can find all of those prior sessions on the Salto YouTube channel. But today, we want to demonstrate how Salto can be configured to monitor and actively notify you when certain conditions or changes are met inside your NetSuite account. So when important components are changed, or maybe there are some risky or questionable changes, Salto can actually watch for those and can proactively notify you, send you an email, can send you a Slack message that something significant has changed in your account. So that's what we want to show today. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into that, and then I'm going to hand it over to you, Jeff. So we've scheduled a full hour for this, but we are reserving plenty of time at the end of that to answer any questions that you all have in the audience. The Q&A is open, so if at any point you have a question for myself or Jeff, please go ahead and drop that into the Q&A. And this session is being recorded. It will be distributed out to everyone who registered and attended afterwards, and eventually will be up on the Salto YouTube channel with the rest of them. And I think that's it. So Jeff, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn it over to you. You're on mute, though.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There was a dog barking, so I thought I'd spare you all of that. Great. Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity to show more cool stuff about Salto. Yeah, so I don't know if this is going to take a full hour or a half an hour or somewhere in between, but I'm sure we can we'll fill the time as necessary for with questions and things like that. I hope that I hope I've trimmed the content sufficient to fit within an hour. So let's see how it goes. Now, what we're looking at here is Salto. I think I'd like to start with a description and overview of what Salto is all about, because for some of you that might be somewhat new, and I wanted to make sure that there's some context for the monitoring features before we dive into that. So just to set the stage, so Salto is a platform for managing business application configuration. So that spans from NetSuite, but also into Zendesk and Salesforce and Okta and Jira and some others as well. And we're expanding that list pretty rapidly at the moment. We're in a phase now of looking at lots of other business applications and wanting to help manage the configuration of those business applications in a consistent manner. So you can see the list of applications I've got here is pretty broad. So I'm going to just confine it down to the two NetSuite instances that's most interesting for me today. I've got a couple of NetSuite instances I'm connected to, a dev instance and a prod instance. I'm going to stick with a prod instance today. We're not really going to do anything about comparing of the instances. We're just going to look at a single instance for today. But when I say I'm connected, what that means is I've authenticated against some APIs and I've done something called a fetch. Now, a fetch is a concept we're going to come back to, but really what it means is I connect to the APIs and I ask lots of questions to NetSuite, and I take all those answers to all those questions and I transform them into this map of the configuration of NetSuite. So everything from your custom records and the file cabinet to things such as roles and restlets and workflows and employees and everything. So all the stuff that you would think of as configuring your NetSuite environment, we would capture here, and we show you things like, if I look at how about a role, and I can look at the configuration of that role. And we get this again through that fetch. So I can see the configuration of the role. I can also see where the role is used. It's used in some transaction forms. It's assigned to a particular employee. So that's me. So so we can see the configuration of elements within NetSuite. So that goes for roles, that goes for workflows. I can see all the workflows that are configured in my environment here. It goes for save searches as well. So I've got all the save searches that are configured in my environment. I can see exactly how they're configured. So that's the first concept to understand, is that Salto connects to NetSuite, asks it lots of questions, and takes all those answers and creates this map. So that's the first thing to understand. Now, of course, we do that for prod. We can do that for dev. We can do some comparisons. We can use we can help you deploy things back and forth. But that's not what today's session is about. Today's session is about monitoring. And monitoring allows us to look at these configurations and watch how they evolve every time we do a fetch, and alert when things happen based on some patterns that you set up. So again, like I said, I come back to the concept of fetch because it's important with respect to monitoring. So monitoring, what that does is it at the end of every fetch, which is normally configured to be a daily event, but you can also run them. I can run a fetch now if I wanted to. At the end of each one of these fetches, one thing that we do, among others, but one thing that we do is we compare the results of this fetch, and I can look at the results of one of these fetches here by clicking on it and saying, okay, this is actually what changed during the fetch. There was an employee was added and 2 custom searches were modified. So that's what happened on this particular fetch. And I can look back in time as to what happened in any previous fetch as well, way back in April or even further. Oh, nothing changed in this particular fetch. But you can see, like, every time we do a fetch, we know what changes. And that's an important piece of the puzzle here. So at the end of that fetch, all those things that we know that have changed, we compare them against this list of monitors. So you can think for when something changes. So I've got several patterns here. They range from very simple. So in this case, it's all changes. So if I look at that, it just says that, hey, anytime in NetSuite changes, I've got the whole tree selected. So anything in any of those elements you saw in the map, anytime anything changes there, I'm going to put a Slack notification into this. You can think of this as kind of an archiving Slack channel. Oh, by the way, that fetch just completed. So that fetch I started a moment ago, it just completed. So it's going to do some of this work right now. So it's going to compare to these things. It's going to, if anything changed during this fetch in this particular instance, it's going to add a message to this Slack channel. So that's a pretty simple one. It's useful for, if you really want to get very detailed and granular about everything that ever changes and have a log of that somewhere else besides NetSuite's system notes. This is one way you could do that. You don't have to turn that one on. You can turn it off if you like. These are all monitors that I created. So I created this one, and I can choose to have it on or off at any particular time. Another type of change is something very specific. So in this case, I'm going to be monitoring just 6 individual elements in NetSuite. If I go down here and I look at what those are, I can find out that there's a workflow that I'm monitoring, just a single workflow that's being monitored. And there are some things related to that workflow that I happen to know are part of the workflow. So I'm anytime any one of those elements changes, I will get a email to my email address. So now you can start to see I can take these very broad or very specific changes and include them in a stream of notifications, either through Slack or for through email. The other ideas about changes could be things like SOCs. A lot of folks are the SOC teams might be very protective over certain kinds of elements. So I have some customers who determined that several of these elements are particularly sensitive when it comes to changes to configuration, and so the SOCs team should be notified. In this case, I've just got my email address, but you can think of this as the SOCs team's email address. And so when these sorts of things change, in this case, it's some saved searches, some subsidiaries, some workflows, and maybe some, you could include in here account changes, things like that. So those are the sorts of things the SOCs team might be involved in. Integration teams are another place where changes may be impactful. So the integration team might have some recipes that integrate Salesforce and NetSuite, and if things change in those those recipes refer to, the integration team might need to know about that. So I've got some things tagged for the integration team, and I've got these two last ones here, which I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on. Let me think. Let me actually have a quick look at this one. I think what I might do is delete this one and just recreate it for us as part of the demonstration. I'm just gonna make sure I didn't do anything else here. It's just those. Okay, cool. I'm actually going to delete this one. We'll recreate it as part of the demo here. So I'll get to that in a moment. But let's start with this other use case where I want to warn. This is another use case that me and Eric were talking about last week. There are cases where suite scripts reference a saved search. And so if the saved search changes, the authors of those suite scripts, or the folks who are responsible for those suite scripts, kind of need to know that. And so let's actually see how that plays out. So I've set up this monitor. This one's a little bit more of a complex monitor. It's monitoring changes in a particular saved search. So if anything ever changes in this saved search, and it's referenced by these files here, that will trigger a monitor. So if I ever change anything, it's going to tell me that the triggers that the saved search has changed. If I come into, for example, if I come in here to save searches, and I can edit this save search, I'm going to make a change to it that has a filter on the particular. This is for employees. I'm actually going to make a change to say, hey, make it a more trimmed down save search. In this case, I'm only going to get a subset of the employees, the subset that have been tagged as our rockstar employees. So that's Dan, Eshed, and Simon. In this case, my name is not on that list. So I've made this change to a save search, and now I want to kind of get the warning from Salto. So I can actually come in here and say I'm going to do a trimmed down search. Normally trimmed down fetch. Normally these fetches would run on everything, but I'm going to just run it on a subset to keep the fetches a little bit shorter. I'm just going to fetch employees and save searches. That should do the trick for us today. So I've kicked off this event, and we're going to wait for it to finish. Eric, do you have any comments or questions so far? Anything from the chat?
Or this use case, nothing in the chat yet, but this use case is one that's near and not dear to my heart. It's something that definitely happens a lot because there's no way to lock down saved searches. There's no way to say this search should only be changed by that developer, for instance. This search, a script relies on this search, but you can never prevent admins from changing. And
Right.
if the admin team is separate, or if the development team is separate and they're not in very tight communication, it's really easy for them to not know that a script needs this search. So we need to be very careful about the changes to this search. I have definitely had cases where an admin gets a request to modify a search and does so, and then that breaks a script, and then the developers are investigating, and we're looking at, well, what's wrong with this data? Why is this record not coming back in the search? Is it missing the values on this field? Not thinking oh, someone changed the search. And so having Salto here to proactively say, oh, hey, by the way, dev team, this search changed. You might want to go
Yeah,
look at the code just to make sure
yeah,
everything's still, all the requirements are still met. That
yeah,
would have saved me a ton of time in several different occasions across several different clients.
yeah.
Because it's putting script only in the search name is about all you can do, and that never works. That's never enough.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I'm gonna go into a little bit more depth based on that commentary.
Yeah, great.
Stand by on that. Cool. All right. So if I go to my email now and I look at what was happening here at 12:16 when that last fetch happened, you can indeed see here that there was a change to the saved search. And so, this is a a sweet script warning to the dev team saying, that particular sweet script changed. So you better go and look at the things that reference that sweet script. So cool. Now, how would I go and look at that? Well, in Salto, of course, I can come into my Explorer view. I can go down to that save search. I can find the record for that save search, and here it is here, and so I can see how it's configured now. But I can also see that this thing is used by these particular scripts. So I'm going to want to go and update all of these scripts, make sure that or update or create a new save search, or let the people who edited the save search know that there was a problem with that. But now I know exactly which scripts are going to be impacted by this particular change. So it's a nice way to kind of come back in and find out the full list of impacts based on that change of script. And now, in my case, that was a fairly limited reference. I can actually make it quite broad, and I can say dev alert uh, scripts change or search changed. I have a broken finger, so I can't type very quickly. So forgive me. Now, in this one, I can say, all right, on any change to to not just that particular save search, but maybe any save search. Maybe I really want to know that for all of my save searches, I want to know if any of these changed. But only I don't care about the ones that don't reference that aren't referenced by scripts. I only care about the ones that are referenced by scripts. And so I can say, I can limit this one a little bit to say, don't send me a notification whenever a script change or whenever save search changes. I don't care when any particular save search change, but if it's referenced by some file, by any file, say any JavaScript file, all of these files now we're going to monitor things that are referenced by these files. And if the save search changes, that's a reference in here, then we're going to trigger the alert. So this is kind of a more this is a more the kind of the broader generalized use case is saying like anytime some save search changes and that save search is referenced by a JavaScript file, let's make sure we alert the dev team. And that's all there is to it, to creating a monitor. So creating a monitor is really easy. And now this thing will trigger at the end of the next fetch.
Yeah,
Cool.
real quick, I'm going to
Yeah.
interject with a question here from Tim. Are the associations between the searches and script limited to scripts that were written in 2.0?
That's a great
And
question.
I don't see any reason why. All we're looking at is JavaScript files. So Salto
Yep.
doesn't know or even care if the JavaScript file is 1.0 or 2.0 or 2.1.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's just looking at this is a JavaScript file and it has the ID of a save search in it.
Yep.
And so that's how it establishes that association. So it does not care what
Yeah.
version it is.
Yeah.
You could probably even, if you had a text file that had that save search and ID, save
Good.
search ID in it, Salto might pick that up.
Good
If that text file was a component of your project, it doesn't matter that it's a SweetScript file. We're just
yeah.
telling it this is a JavaScript file, or show me where all the JavaScript files that reference saved searches. So it's building it based on the content of the file, not on the version of SweetScript.
Yeah, so that's a great thought. So what happens here is like here's the sweet script. It's just got this very simple reference to the search. We pick that up as a reference, and when we're doing the fetch, part of this map creation is looking at the generated dependencies. So that we create this generated dependency out of that search through text files for things that look like script IDs, basically. And so we tag those and we create these generated dependencies, and that allows me now, the map now includes that dependency of this JavaScript file on the referenced script save search. Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Great question. Keep them coming.
I do have another
Okay.
one
Yes,
from
go for it.
John.
Hey,
What
John.
if uh, instead of having the ID in text, in the code, what if the save search is used as a parameter in a script deployment?
Uh, Also a great question. And yes, when the parameters are included as dependencies in the map. So when we do a fetch, we pick up the script parameter, the parameters. If a save search is a parameter on one of those searches on one of those scripts, then yes, we will create that dependency and we can then monitor that way.
It will look a little different. Your monitor would need to be set up slightly differently because now you're not looking at for the dependency in a JavaScript file. You're looking for the dependency in a script record.
Mm-hmm.
So the conditions would be different, but you still have that connection. You still have a link, a dependency that you can filter on in your monitors.
Yeah, so you can see here that I looked for the save search for changes in save search references by files, I believe. And so
Mm-hmm.
to point, in addition to the JavaScript file, I may also want to include the client scripts. And what else are there? What other kinds of scripts are there?
User
Sweetlets,
events, Sweetlets.
user
Yep.
events. Yeah. So all of these you could now I'm going to look for references from all of these places into those save searches, and any of these will now trigger a monitor, just like you said, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will
Great
capture these out
questions.
there.
Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you, John. Indeed. All right, excellent. Okay, so that was, let's see here, that's the save search. Okay, now I wanted to create one from scratch. We sort of did that once already, but let's create another one from scratch. Another one that I get sometimes is employee changes. Um, Employee changes. Now, this is particularly interesting around role assignments. So if there's any modifications, say in this case, to my employee records, which by default aren't fetched by Salto, but it's easy to add them in. So in my case, I found it very useful to have my employee list as something I can download. You can do two things there. You can turn off the filtering so that employee lists are fetched, and then you can turn on some fields to omit so that you're not pulling in PII, for example. So I do a combination of that, which we can get into in some future date. But so I do have the employee lists. They're very small in my case. And so anytime there's a change to one of those, let's do another notification here to me. I know it's painful watching me type my email address over and over again. I apologize for the slowness. Did I get it all right? Looks good. Okay. So that's it. I just created another one, right? So any change to employee, I'm going to now see something show up. So if I go and I do something like add a role to an employee, let's go and look at my employees here, and I'll look at myself, and maybe I'll give myself more access that I'm really supposed to have, and that should show up on someone's oopsie, that should show up on someone's radar screen, right? So if I give myself, I don't know, a buyer role, um, that now counts as a change. So now if I do a fetch, I'm going to see that particular change show up as well. So I feel like I'm kind of uh, flogging a dead horse now. I hope this is still interesting. So let's do another fetch on those employees, and I should see now something show up in my email. In fact, now let's actually watch it happen. We should see the email show up here in a moment. Any questions about that so far? Any commentary, Eric?
Yeah, there's a question from Dan here. Where is the filtering for employee records configured in Salto?
So if you're doing a fetch and you want to include employees, you remove the filter from the NetSuite.nacl config file, which I'll show you if you like. And then if you wanted to add in the omit fields to omit, there's some good documentation on help.salto.id at help.salto.io to kind of guide you through that. So I definitely recommend having a look at that resource. And that we saw that email come in. So here's a new email with now I can see very specifically that the buyer was the additional code that was added to the NACL files. I don't think I mentioned NACL files. I should have. So this was a change to this particular employee, and it shows me the roles that were changed. Now, let me just talk briefly about what we're looking at. This is what we call a .nacl file. So NACL is the Salto configuration language. Underlying all of our fetches and all of that stuff, that map I was talking about, the way we encode that map is in a bunch of text files called NACL files, otherwise known as NACL files. So you'll hear us talking about NACL files. And those are just like I said, it's the encoding of that. It's the text version of that map that allows us to look very specifically and comprehensively at all the configuration. So in this case, we can see that this particular employee was given a new role. Cool. Yeah, so the configuration, I'm gonna go off script just for a moment here. Not that I had a script, but I'm gonna go off road a little bit because so Dan was asking about how to configure this. If you go into the files view, if you go into the Explorer and then in the files view, there's this Salto config directory here where there's an adapter folder with a netsuite.nacl file. So our configuration file is also a NACL file. So don't think of NACL files as configuration files. It's everything, but our configuration file is stored as a NACL file, and it looks a little bit like this. So if I wanted to include my accounts, for example, this is the exclude section. I just want to pull out my account from the exclude section. If I delete that and I do a fetch now, it's going to add in accounts into the next fetch. So now now in my list of stuff that I fetch, you'll see that accounts isn't here yet. And now that I've added that, I've taken that exclusion out of the exclude area, I will no longer exclude accounts and it'll show up in this list. So Dan, that's the answer to your question. It's this file here that governs the fetch and the extent of the fetch.
You can use this file to set up like sort of the default behaviors of Salto for your account. If you do
Yeah,
want certain things fetched, don't want other things fetched, you can use this to set up those default behaviors.
exactly right. So I can do things like, I can, if I wanted to re-exclude my employees, I can just copy that and paste it here and put an employee. Now, next time I fetch, my employees won't get fetched. They'll be deleted from this list, so they'll actually go away. So be careful with this. I mean, it's not you can always get them back, but it can disrupt the fetch process if you're not careful. Good documentation, like I said, on help.salto.io, and also there's even deeper but a little bit more sparse information on the Salto open source GitHub repo too. So keep those two spots in mind. Awesome. So that fetched. Now I have accounts. I still have employees because the edit didn't take effect until after the thing was done. But now I have accounts, which is kind of nice. Now I can see all my account configuration as well. And now I can set up some monitoring on accounts. So if an account is added, for example, that's a great one to have in your SOX one. So if someone adds an account or deletes an account, we can have the SOX team notified about that. Great. So it looks like I had about a half an hour worth of content. So I'm I'm free for questions for half an hour if anyone has some
Great.
commentary about the questions.
Yep, I've got one from Roy here.
Hello,
If
Roy.
I have many alerts set up for changes in Salto, what happens when we do a sandbox refresh? Will I get a ton of alerts of all the changes?
That's a great question, actually. You might, and so I would say it might be worthwhile while you're doing the refresh for the fetch after the refresh, turn these all off and avoid those alerts. So that would be one way to handle this problem. That's probably the best way. Yeah.
Yeah. You might want to know what, if you're doing a refresh, you may want a record of what changed. Maybe
So leave
you
this one
might
on.
want to restore some of those changes
True.
after your refresh. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can just flip them all off, do the fetch. Now it's in sync. Turn them all back on, and you're good to go moving forward.
And these switches here, they don't modify your ability to restore either. So after a refresh, one of the great things you can do is you can compare your current environment to the environment that before the refresh, and I can create a deployment based on that. So that the monitors being on or off don't affect the ability to use a previous snapshot or fetch of the environment to restore from before a refresh, for example.
Got a couple more questions here. One from John Finley. They're both from Johns, but different Johns. One from
Hello,
John
John.
Finley. When fetching, what is the overhead to my NetSuite instance? So, what kind of
Ah,
impact
yeah.
does fetching have on your
Yeah,
NetSuite
great
account?
question. Really good question. So, the evidence I've got is, well, I mean, it's primarily anecdotal from my perspective. I think there are some people who've done more rigorous studies on this too. My anecdotal evidence from being a Salto for 2.5 years is that customers never complain about that. There's no situation where Salto where something was going slow and customers called me up and said, "Is this Salto doing this to me?" Just that hasn't happened in my experience. The more rigorous answer is, we hit the SDF APIs. We also hit some of the SOAP and REST APIs through our Suite app, and we are, like you saw, in and out in just a few minutes. For larger organizations, the fetch can take 15 or 20 minutes, but it's really just doing reads on the SDF API, and it hasn't been something that my customers have brought up an impact on performance of NetSuite.
Yeah, so most of that work is happening in, web requests,
Yes.
REST or SOAP requests. And so those have some amount of concurrency, no matter what level of account you have. And so
Mhm.
it should, for the most part, be fairly innocuous. Maybe if you have the very smallest number of SuiteCloud licenses in the very small lowest tier of account, you might, one of your threads might be blocked for a while, but otherwise you should.
Yeah.
I think most companies are going to have multiple like SuiteCloud Plus licenses or multiple concurrent threads for their requests. They should have plenty of availability in their connection pool.
I'm chuckling because I did run into a concurrency error once, but the funny thing about
Mm-hmm.
that was that it was the Boomi team. The Boomi team had expanded their concurrency
Get
to being
throttled.
something really
Yeah.
big, and took up all the stuff. And what the manifestation was that our fetches were failing because we couldn't get any concurrency on that. So something to keep an eye on. But we aren't usually the culprit on that. I would be happy to be schooled on that particular fact. But like I say, I haven't heard that from my customers in a long history with Salto.
All right. Another John, but this one John Baptista. Can Salto detect what script updated a sales order status, for example?
Ah, great. That's a good question. We can tell you what scripts reference the sales order, I believe, but we can't tell you in actively what what changed a record, right? So we're only getting metadata. We're only getting configuration of like, hey, tell me about all your scripts in your file cabinet, or tell me about all the workflows, right? We're not asking about we're not asking system notes about who made a particular change. We do a little bit of that just for doing fetches. There's this quick fetch thing here where we do a change based fetch based on system notes, but that's it. I mean, we don't actually look in system notes to see who made changes, so we can't really tell that. We can just tell the dependencies.
Yeah, we're mostly monitoring configuration, not data. Right? We're not notifying you that a new sales order was created or that a sales order transitioned to a new status. There are other tools that you would use to do that sort of thing, workflows, suite script, etc. But Salto is looking at the configuration, the metadata level.
Yeah.
So it's not really data monitoring that we're doing. The employees, that's kind of a special case, I suppose. That's we're monitoring data there.
Yeah. A
But
little bit.
for the
Yeah.
most part, we're not watching the transactions, right? We're not watching custom record creations,
Yeah.
anything like that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We do get into things like, accounts are almost data, although really they're just containers. Employees are almost data. There are some customers that include some item data, but for the most part, we try and exclude all the things that aren't strictly configuration.
Then if you were monitoring all of that, your whole item catalog, all your transactions, your
Yeah.
fetches would really take a long time then.
Yes. Yes, they would.
And it would only get worse over time.
Yep. Yeah. Excellent.
All
How are we doing?
right. Uh, I don't have any questions at the moment. Everyone out there, please
All
feel
right.
free to ask us any questions you've got left. Otherwise, Jeff, I might let you get in any final words.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it sounds like there are some folks on the line today who have some experience with Salto, so thank you for that. We do want to create a tool that's useful, and so feedback is really valuable for us. We will take it wherever it's available. Feel free to reach out to me or to type messages into the support channel. This is a great way to get some help, either through a bot, which love them or hate them, it does exist here. But you can also send us messages, and we try really hard to respond to messages quickly, and uh, help our customers out. So please, feedback is awesome. Questions are great. We really want to make our customers happy. Hope we're doing a good job of doing that. Let us know if we can help out.
I do have another question in here from Tim, just under the
Oh,
wire.
okay.
Um, Tim would like you to know this is not their fault, but if our script files are stored in various folders in our system,
Okay.
our filing cabinet is huge. Is Salto looking at the full filing cabinet?
Great. Another great question. Yeah. So we can be very particular about what we fetch. Again, this comes into the NetSuite.NACL file. So this is the default setup. We fetch the suite scripts file and the templates file, and then we exclude some stuff that's big. So the mail merge folder and the templates folder tends to be large. We also found that a lot of customers are storing Excel files that can be really large. So by default, we exclude all those. So we can get really specific about what you include and what you exclude, and we can go beyond the standard SDF capabilities, and we can actually do things like grab the suite bundles folder, for example, as well. But so you can both expand and exclude. I think it's like this. Exclude things in the file cabinet pretty flexibly. So this would add another top level folder and all of its subfolders. If I wanted to exclude some of the subfolders, like exclude some of the suite bundles, I can add those exclusions in here as well. So yes, we can get a very large amount of your file cabinet or a very tiny part of your file cabinet or anywhere in between.
And it can be anywhere in the filing cabinet. We don't have
Yeah,
that, suite scripts restriction that maybe SDF has.
that's right.
Uh, it can be anywhere at all in the file cabinet.
Yep.
I won't try to pry too deeply as to why their scripts are scattered about, but
Not your fault, Tim. We understand.
yeah.
This is a safe space.
All right. Do we have any other questions? If not, I will bring us to a close here.
Okay.
I don't see any. So,
All right. Well,
like we said at the top, this is being recorded. It will be sent out to anyone who attended, anyone who registered, and eventually it will be available on the Salto YouTube channel. And if you liked what you saw, you can check out Salto for yourself by signing up for a free demo at salto.io. And you can also schedule a personalized demo to get any sort of nuance about your own personal situation ironed out with Salto experts. that. Oh, one last question.
Oh, just
I see
barely
it
made
from Mahima. Is Salto able to read any files that are locked in the UI?
No. Well, let's see. It depends on the level of lock. So there are some bundles that lock for edit, but you can still see them. So in general, locked elements are not fetched. Fully locked elements are not fetched. So yeah, if you can't see them in NetSuite, we won't be able to see them either.
All right. Really under the wire
Question.
with that question.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you,
Appreciate
Jeff,
the time.
and thank you everyone who attended.
Thank you, Eric.